This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. So much happening in the last week of the NBA, and we haven't even gotten down to basically the final stretch run, essentially. There's still so much basketball left to be played. It's maybe a handful of games, maybe about 15 to 20 games left to play, and yet we are so much further away from really determining who's going to be in it and who's going to be out of it. But I guess that's what makes it all intriguing. But more importantly, a lot of stuff happening with teams who have made big moves, pushing chips all into the table, only to find the outcome being not what they had hoped for. So stuff to get into. Cannot wait to do it. Go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man. www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Rocking the nice fitted 19 Media Group cap. What's good, my man? Looking fresh to death today.
It's very kind of you, sir. I mean, just trying to follow in your proverbial footsteps, but you know what it is, man. We back up here with the Baseline NBA podcast. Another great episode. Stretch run of the NBA season. Lots to talk about, fresh off the heels of a weekend where our Celtics, and the Lakers winning streak. So I'm always excited about that. But again, a lot more information to kind of get into. And I just wanted to, and before we kind of get into it, I think we might have been, well, you know what? No, we weren't premature. We were right on time, but the impress me segments continue because just a week after you talk about Jokic and the Giannis game and how it was nice to see those big men kind of doing things. Joker goes out there and puts up a line we've never seen in NBA history with 30, 20, and 20. MVP gap is clearly closing in. I saw on something on ESPN today, like after that game, it cut SGA's MVP odds in half after that one game. But I think Jokic has always been right there in the running. I think it's been neck and neck. I don't know how anybody was saying it was SGA's to win, nor it was his already. But I love what's going on in the NBA right now, brother. And these two guys are in for a historic stretch as they're even playing today as we're recording this evening. Yes, sir.
Those are the claps for thank you, Nikola Jokic, for doing exactly what I think a lot of people are afraid to have what happens, right? Like when you have already just assumed that, that they should hand the award because Oklahoma City Thunder, have the best record in basketball and, all this other kind of stuff. It's just like an easy give. And I'm not saying that by far SGA is still not ahead. I'm not even saying that SGA in what he's done in totality through this season is not deserving of being the lead vote getter for MVP. But there's a reason why Jokic is a 3-time NBA MVP winner, right? And it's not about just what he's doing, Shaw. We talked about sometimes it takes iron to sharpen iron. And that to me is part of the narrative that I think gets missed when we're watching these guys play their season out, right? Like if I'm SGA, I'm not saying that you should do anything outside the scope of what's made your team successful and put them in the position that they're in. But yeah, go out there and drop another 50. Or yeah, go out there and drop 25 assists. If the game allows you to be able to do that, iron sharpens iron. I think that game that he had against Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I'm not saying it's because of Antetokounmpo. What I'm saying is he recognizes the magnitude of the moment, what's at stake for the Denver Nuggets, and he knows that this is the time where he has to step his game up even further, and those are the performances that are coming out. These are the end results. And we as NBA, either pundits or those that are watching the game, get to watch this, absorb it, and bask and glow in the greatness of what's made him the kind of player that we always have thought he was, right? And then what we're seeing right now. Like, this is what we're asking of our great players when the moment asks of it, he's delivering. And I think because of him, he's making this MVP, run even that much more interesting. And hate it or love it, if he winds up winning it, I'm not going to be mad at it. SGA shouldn't be mad at it. If nothing, it should force him to go out there and take greatness to another level to secure his ability to win his first MVP award.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're recording this the day of the game that they're playing, so we don't even know the outcome of that. Don't know what that will be, and how those narratives may even shift by the time this absolutely airs. But I love the fact that there should not be this just coronation, if you will, for SGA just because Joker's won it so many times. I think I know Joker's still very legitimately in this conversation, and the fact of voter fatigue is a real situation. And there's others out there saying that they won't, but it is that. And it's really interesting because I was thinking about this before we're coming on air. It's like, well, he's an MVP, a multiple time MVP, is now having his best season, the best season of what have been any other previous MVP runs. And that's not to mitigate and to say that somebody couldn't come up from the throws like SGA and be right there and compete with him. But statistically speaking, Joker is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And if you took both those guys off those teams, I guess the question is, who do you think would actually still be able to be maybe a playoff contender? And I don't know. I think I would pick OKC in terms of their overall totality because so much is centered around what Joker does in terms of even the play creation and the rebounding and the scoring, as you will too. And I won't say SGA is just a scorer because he does defend as well. But both of these guys have strong cases. And I know we're not in a situation where we want to see ties and give it to both of them. But I will be interested to see how the voters ultimately go. And this is not a conversation we engage in because it is a pretty healthy narrative that gets discussed on a regular basis. But it's intrigued my interest right now, especially the way Joker is truly coming on here and trying to gain ground, it seems like, on SGA in the MVP race.
Well, and I think the other thing you have to look at too, Shaw, is the scheduling and where these teams fit in the narrative of what they need to do for the remainder of the games left to play, right? Like, of course, if you are Dagenalt, you would love to give your team opportunity, your star players opportunities where there's some rest, because obviously this is going to be a tough run, right, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. If you're the Denver Nuggets, unfortunately, you don't have the luxury to afford that kind of opportunity. So Mike Malone knows he has to maximize getting the Denver Nuggets in the best position possible to at least wind up hosting first round. You know what I mean? And so you're going to wind up seeing a skewed version of the way that this is. And again, when we're giving this award, are we giving this award up until, well, he was so dominant, and then now because they're laying off, it should not count against him? Forget that. It's the MVP award through the totality of the regular season. And I think that's where it becomes very intriguing that you see these kind of matchups in a game like the one that you're speaking of, that as we're recording this show is highly watchable because of where these two teams are. But more importantly, when you see a performance of like what Nikola Jokic did, and he's very firmly the second place, in second place of the MVP, you want to see where that level of greatness comes from in an SGA. He can go through the regular season. Again, he can drop another 50 burger or whatever, but I want to see where his impact when he has to play against his contemporaries. These are his contemporaries now. The Giannis Antetokounmpos, the Luka Doncic's. He's no longer second tier, and because the team is successful and he's basically the best player on the team, he's going to have to, because of his performances through the regular season and why we've been watching him so closely and we've been pushing him into that conversation. This is the game that we need to see where SGA should be constantly in that conversation, because every time he decides to play against those great players, he's going to put out that best performance necessary, whether they win or lose. I just don't want to see a dud. I don't want to see, well, SGA just disappeared, because that's going to count against him, and it's going to count against the viability of saying, is he really deserving to be the MVP when you're seeing equal contemporaries out there exuding that level of greatness in high-level games, primetime games, or games where it matters the most?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think while we do want this matchup, you want to see them go head to head. They're not really guarding each other, right? They play two completely different positions. It's different from the Embiid Jokic days, right? When they did guard each other and they went up, and then Embiid basically won the MVP in the one-on-one matchup, in Philadelphia, where he just kind of flamed Joker in that game for whatever reason. We're not going to be able. I'm sorry.
It was the turning point, right? Like where everything was kind of neck and neck. That performance really kind of made the ascension. It made the exclamation point about, we feel comfortable if Joel Embiid winds up winning the MVP, will not be disappointed because of where he was in that matchup against Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, but there's the other side of it too, where some people think it's ridiculous. Okay, well that one game was that, right? That's what decided it. When even what you said previously, it's a regular season award. It's the complete body of work, and because until we get true determining factors and whatever the aspects are that are going to be the determining these awards, it's always going to be subjective. And a one game 1v1 scenario, so to speak, can tilt the favors and tilt the odds, similar to a historic NBA performance of epic proportions when you have 30, 20, and 20, in a game that you do ultimately win. All of a sudden the other guys, the league guys' odds have been cut in half. Like, it's very wild to see how it's oscillating really from day to day. But that also goes to show you how close it is, how these two great players are playing this season. And I don't want to take anything away from both of them. I want to be on the positive side of this. So let's see how things shake out. Again, we'll see how it goes in terms of the team matchup. Also, ultimately, where both of these teams finish. While we know OKC is going to be the number 1 seed, can Denver get a 2 seed or 3 seed? And does that give Joker a better line into winning another MVP?
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I want to see SGA cook. That's it. That's all it is, man. Like, I want to see him cook. And look, it wasn't too long ago, Shaw, that we were having this conversation about Jayson Tatum. It wasn't too long ago we were having this conversation, about Kyrie Irving, right? I mean, you look at the numbers that some of these guys have been posting, and they're viable numbers. But again, part of that indicator, I think, of right now where the present state is, where it's all about what the eyes are telling you, is when you have these kind of matchups happening on primetime television, where at the height of the game of basketball is being watched.
Can I just say that, because I was going to save this, but you touched on it, and I got to get this off my chest. Okay. I am sick of the Jayson Tatum denigration. Like, I'm tired of it, and whatever it is that Fox Sports or others people have against Jayson Tatum, like, it's absolutely got to stop. Like, close your eyes and get out of here. Like, stop it. Stop it. Jayson Tatum is already an all-time great. And I'm just, not because we root for the Celtics or whatever. I just feel like this era of wanting to tear guys down, and because he doesn't do it in the way that we're used to. And I can even grant the fact that, well, if Kobe is his idol and the guy he will look up to, he doesn't have the same outward exuberance as Kobe. That doesn't mean he's not a killer. Doesn't mean he's not a fierce competitor. And everything that keeps coming out about Jayson Tatum, especially within the last couple of weeks, like, it's just been so negative while he's been delivering. And you're talking about guys who've been giving 40-point performances, in wins and one in a loss against Cleveland as well. Like, that guy is hooping and has been hooping. And after the disrespect from the Olympics, yes, he didn't win, finals MVP, but he won an NBA championship. There's just so much just negativity around this guy for whatever reason. Stop it. Jayson Tatum is on a Hall of Fame pace. He's an all-time great, and we need to give him his flowers in the current and in the present. Yeah, so I had no idea that our conversations were going to lean into these different directions, but I completely agree with you. I will say this though, Shaw. What I think now that I'm appreciating more about what I'm seeing from Jayson Tatum is that he has found a way to show us his greatness within the confines of a very well-balanced team. And he doesn't make any bones about the fact that he's not going to be considered an MVP candidate in the same way as an SGA, as Nikola Jokic, because he understands that the way that this team has been structured for him and for everyone, and the way that the Celtics are, is as long as they're successful in winning and his guy, Jalen Brown, is eating, and all the rest of those guys are eating, he's all for it. And at first, I thought it wasn't as genuine, because when I saw how he first came out initially, I really thought that his mindset, very similar to the Mamba mentality, was one more to be so self-possessed, self-absorbed, that you wind up just completely, overlooking everyone else and what they could potentially help bring to the table if you so badly want to win a championship. But you've seen how year after year after year, even as the distance about trying to make him the viable MVP candidate, which there should not be. His numbers prove that he should be an MVP candidate every single year. But he's doing it sacrificing certain things that I think has what's elevated that idea or perception
that he's supposed to be an MVP, and yet he's not in that conversation by the time that we get to the end of the year. And we don't really look in totality about what is encompassed around what he deals with and what he does throughout the course of the regular season. That may mean why he's not 1, 2, or 3, right? Like when we think he's supposed to be. But think about it. Jaylen Brown, if he was on another team, would he not be considered an MVP candidate alone? Like the reason why those guys are together is why we see the sustainability of success for the Boston Celtics. And I think people who watch their favorite teams, their favorite players and stuff like that, look at how your team is structured and tell me, would you want it only about him being an MVP, or would you want your team sustainably in the playoffs, in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the NBA Finals, year in and year out with confidence? Would you want that more than you worry about wanting your guy as an MVP? And I'll give you the perfect comparison or analogy to that. Look at Joel Embiid. Sure. Look at how many iterations of the Philadelphia 76ers. We just talked about this last week. And I'm not shamming on Joel. What I'm saying is that is an organizational decision about how they structured that team. When you look at Joel Embiid and you look at the iterations of the Sixers that they've had over the years, he's gotten his MVP. But for all of that, does that mean that they were any more successful when he was there that in his rookie year and his rookie dominance? So that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of moving pieces to that.
There are a lot of moving pieces. And I think for Tatum, a lot of it is for media type specifically. It's a disappointment. He didn't reach the mountaintop as fast as we wanted him to for the signs that he showed. And it took a certain level of changing his own mindset, and took Mazzulla kind of coming in and kind of changing the team mindset to some degree for them to get there. Yes, they got to the finals with Udoka, but ultimately, kind of choked that away. And it's interesting now from, you take it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe now, where, Tatum's for sure going to be an MVP. He's going to win multiple. Now, no one's saying those things. He's going to proverbially always be slotted in the 4 or 5 slot, when it comes to the votes. Like, yeah, he's good, but he can't really win. Right. And guys, like, if you were to take future MVP odds, you take Anthony Edwards right now. Probably most people would, over Tatum in terms of Tatum, because we feel like we've seen what he is. We know what he is. He's not going to be any more than what he's shown currently. That may or may not be true. I think the aspect of, just trying to crap on the guy and saying he's not all these other things and basically trying to take away from his greatness is where I'm just like, it's a bridge too far. And I'm tired of it. And, it's everything I see on social media right now. And, Jayson Tatum is an amazing basketball player. And he's accomplished a lot and a lot more than any of the others. I think the latest one was, he's like Klay Thompson at Klay Thompson's peak. Well, slightly better than Klay. Like, get out of here. just get out of here. Like, just stop it. So anyway, I've careened us much further than where our agenda was supposed to be here today. So I apologize, but I came in a little ornery, a little bit spicy, and I needed to get that off my chest, especially after the Lakers lost to Boston.
We should have seen the signs, bro. You aren't wearing traditional Celtic green. You got a glowing green going on, man. I feel
like this is kind of like their alternate jersey that they have that black and that lime green one. Yeah, so maybe it's a little lean into that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know what leprechaun you got ready for this St. Patrick's Day run, but I'm saying I don't know if I want to be running into you in them Boston streets now.
Man, let's keep it positive, NBA community. Can we do that?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
I know.
Good luck. I mean, in this day and age, man, you know what I'm saying? Hey, LeBron about to step to some people. Not gonna name no names, but
big facts.
Cali Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. We got a great show coming up, man. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about things going on with the New York Knicks losing Jalen Brunson, what's that's going to mean. And it's not always sunny in Dallas. I will let you know what that actually means as well, too. And then we got a quick little who you got. We're carrying this over from our previous episode because, Shaw, the mind warp that he was able to transport our mentalities to in the possibilities of who would you choose? Would you choose to start your franchise? Would you choose a Cade Cunningham or would you choose a Tyrese Haliburton? I was not letting that go, and we're going to make sure we get that in your who you got. So as always, be sure to get at my man Shaw, Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Leader. Show's Twitter NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You can go to www.thebaselinenba.com to not only check this episode out, but also the plethora of episodes that we drop for your listening pleasure. And if you see us on the blue and white logo, because you're catching this on YouTube, remember that is the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, be running these content streets. So be sure to check out the family of great content creators at www.19mediagroup.com. Coming up, Shai and I go over some really, really good, juicy stuff that's been happening in the association off the court. And we'll also talk about the Jalen Brunson injury. But first, basketball season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get the real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you pay $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed when you use the promo code CLNS. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead you to big payouts, as it's available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Prize Picks is truly the best way to win money, with all various opportunities to play and collect your winnings. Due to the enormous selection of players and stat types available, we can mix and match our playing strategies based on personal preferences. I might take Jayson Tatum for more than 27 points and Drew Holiday for more than 2 steals to mix in some defense with my selections. Or do you think that Steph Curry will get more than 5 3-pointers next week? Giannis for more than 35 points. Cook up these takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season and your crew running your game on Prize Picks. And for those who love a quick prize win, Prize Picks is the way to go. You can make your picks and submit it in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, with Prize Picks, it's more about it's not as much as picking more or as much as picking less. Again, that promo code is CLNS. Get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. The baseline is rocking with Prize Picks, and you should too. Prize Picks, run your game. Coming up, Callie Warren Shaw discussing more. Don't miss it here on the Baseline. We're back, Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Couple of things going on in the association. Wanted to make sure we highlight. So, Shaw, the interesting thing that has been going on now is the post interviews and the aftermath interviews that take place after the fallout of the big trades that have happened so far this season. And one that was pretty interesting to me, now the reveal about where De'Aaron Fox was with the Sacramento Kings organization and everything that led to his eventual movement to being sent to the San Antonio Spurs. And I guess to me, I find it very interesting because it definitely feels like, I don't know if De'Aaron Fox is somebody that likes to keep things, kind of private, doesn't want to speak ill. Obviously, this was the organization that drafted him. That this is his starting point is now he's moving forward to Sacramento, but he is revealing some interesting things about what led to him eventually being traded. Obviously he requested, to be traded. And to me, I just find it just kind of interesting that, the Sacramento Kings allowed certain things to be leaked out about how he is or where he is. And then now De'Aaron Fox is on the defensive saying, look, I wasn't on board with the fact that, you guys let go of Mike Brown. I wasn't even, told about it. And, I just felt like the organization didn't have my back. And so I don't know if he was hedging his bets, if he outright just really felt some kind of way about what took place there. But clearly he wants to make sure that he's like, yo, I don't want to be coming into any situation where you guys think that I'm the reason why I asked to be moved. This is really all on them. What are your thoughts about, De'Aaron Fox and him laying these assertions down about what led to what happened with him with Sacramento?
I think there's the old adage that, hey, there's 3 sides to a story. And so I don't think Fox is squeaky clean in everything that's happened here. But we also know the Sacramento Kings organization has not always been the most well run, and that they have had some faux pas. And we as media types haven't always agreed with some of the decisions that they've made and the things that have gone out there. But with current ownership and previous ownership as well, even going back to the DeMarcus Cousins days. So it's a really, really strange situation. Fox kind of going on this acquittal tour, if you will. Well, maybe not a tour, but again, he's making these comments. And at this point, it doesn't really matter. They both parties have moved on.
Exactly. I in my head, I'm like, why is it necessary now? Like I felt that there was a window where if you really had to say something about this, you could have said something about it, and you chose not to say anything about it. And it obviously didn't help your cause. Now it's almost like you're revisiting this because there's so much more that's going on right now that I don't think anybody really would have cared because of the fact, to your point, Shaw, it's the Sacramento Kings. And it just doesn't feel like anything that they do any longer has like a genuine level of longevity in it being like an organization that knows what they're doing, right? So for now, for him to have to come out and say something, I feel like it feels like you're trying to save face to something that there actually is some truth to what was going on that we weren't privy to or we weren't aware of.
Yeah, it's water under the bridge, or at least it should be. He's moved on. They moved on. He's in a situation that's going to be better for him long term, although the Wemby injury obviously impacts the short term viability of this season. But Sacramento is, listen, you don't need to throw them any more under the ground based on everything you kind of just said. Like, hey, we've seen who they are. We understand to a certain degree how they operate. So it's not just like you're not throwing any more dirt, on the grave here. It's just like, all right, cool. We know it's not the best organization. So you moved on for whatever the reasons are. Let that be between y'all. And I just hope that De'Aaron has whatever closure he needs, and the Kings do as well too. Like, we don't need to revisit this, And I want to say the victim in this is Mike Brown, but some way like Mike Brown's wounds get reopened as a result of whatever Fox is here saying as well too. And Mike Brown he's still getting paid, but he's out of a job. Right. So, whatever that means for him now, like he's not having the same piece that he would like to have at this point, after being let go, I guess about 2 months ago now. So hopefully Sacramento and De'Aaron Fox, whenever Fox comes back into Sacto, in future seasons, it's still well received and they can give him, love and they just can forget. And say, hey, it's a time I spent 8 years there, but now I'm a San Antonio Spur, and let's kind of keep it pushing from there.
All right, Shaw, let's shift our focus now to it's not always sunny in Dallas. With everything now that has happened with the Dallas Mavericks, you could not have scripted a more disastrous turn of events. And look, I can understand why people are very much adamant about, Nico Harrison should be on the chopping block. He's got to be ready to go, right? I get that part of it a little bit. I kind of don't get that part of it in the sense that if you are an executive and you have a player like Luka Doncic, and I understand the idea is no matter what you do, you cannot let that guy go or whatever the case may be. I've been more on the side of saying, what do you expect this guy to do? Right? Obviously, Luka Doncic is in a position where he's probably going to command a far greater demand that the Dallas Mavericks are not going to be able to hold or handle, right? This is not something where you can franchise tag a player in the NFL with someone like a Luka Doncic. And if he's doing things or exhibiting things that is really counterintuitive to the longevity of that franchise's viability, what do you expect them to do? And I just find it interesting that like now, especially the comments that are being made by Klay Thompson's dad, Michael Thompson, out in LA. And I'm not saying this to disrespect him because obviously he's protecting his son and he's protecting his son's interest in what he was trying to do when he signed on to be with the Dallas Mavericks. But I think it all lends itself into the chaos that has occurred with this season. But I think everyone's focus has been more about the trade. This to me, it goes a little bit even further before that obviously has not surfaced in the kind of way that we would have thought is so easily, like we see it as it is. It's now all just happened at one time, and it has just completely spun itself out of control. I was just curious about what you thought Michael Thompson's comments were, about saying Klay is in purgatory, with what's happened now with the Dallas Mavericks, with the sentiment by people saying that, the Mavericks really should just tank the rest of this year, this, that, and the third, and everything going on with the hatred, the vitriol that has been shifted to the way of Nico Harrison and him being on the chopping block.
I think Michael Thompson's comments are in defense of his son, right? He left a situation, a very storied situation in Golden State to come to Dallas where he could hopefully have a new beginning with what he thought was going to be a championship run. The Mavs made the finals last year, so it's not impossible to think that he could have been a nice fit and should have been a nice fit. but it just went left immediately. You know, Luka wasn't really healthy for the beginning part of the year and missed so many games. And then, you know, the blockbuster, monumental, historical trade happens, which sends Luka to LA. Kyrie goes down, AD goes down, Gafford goes down. Washington, like if you turned your 2K sliders up to 100, this probably still wouldn't happen in the same fashion. Nico Harrison has had an unprecedented run of bad luck, you know, with injuries in this organization following what was a pretty, by most people's account, porous trade, and where he at least should have extracted more equity.
See,
We don't need to.
Yeah, to that part, you're sure. That's where I wanted, and I appreciate you going there. If you want to knock him because he did not get more from the trade,
Sure.
I get that. You know, and you can, you know, chop him down as much as you want to on that. But I still am, and maybe I'm just the only person who's dying on this hill about this. I don't know what you expect any organization to do, any GM to do when it comes to having the kind of player that apparently Luka Doncic has been. It seems like, you know, he was running that ship or that assignment. Like they allowed a lot more than I think we're giving credit to. And maybe because he's just such a great player, we all let it slide. My whole thing is, how are you going to knock Nico Harrison for that? Like, what do you expect him and that organization to do? They're not the Lakers. They're not the Celtics. Damn, they're not even the New York Knicks. They're not one of the original teams. And you've got a player who's arguably going to command much more than what their market can actually harness or be able to take in.
Well, I mean, I think that's debatable, right? You know, because it's easy for, I think, Luka supporters and, you know, people putting stuff out about Luka from his camps, like, hey, he was never going to leave Dallas, he would have stayed there, so forth and so forth. And then you take a franchise like, you know, the Cowboys are in that place as well too, in that state, and hey, like they're a big name organization. So the Mavs, again, the new owners, whether or not they want to move the team or whatever the case to be, I'm not really buying any of that. It's just, I think they would have. I know they could have find the money. They could make it work, but they didn't want to hitch the wagon there. But I don't want to relitigate all that, because I think when you're talking about the Nico stuff now, it's, hey, that was one thing. And we're forced, if you will, to kind of put it all into one situation. And because Luka traded, that's why Kyrie got hurt. That's why these are not things that are related. Right. They've happened in the same season, but one did not cause the other. And that's where I think at this point, it's a little unfair to Nico, but at the end of the day, he started what was like this absolute crap storm of, you know, kind of vitriol surrounding the Mavs organization. Then they have a thing where they're going to raise ticket prices as well too. Like, so there's been missteps every which way, but injuries is not Nico Harrison's fault. However, the Mavs are in a rough situation here now. And ironically, and I know, again, it's funny because I'm not the tank king here at all. But I think at this stage, from a public perception standpoint, losing games now would make sense. And I'm not telling them to go do that. But if they could somehow fumble their way into a top 5 draft pick as they fall out, that could salvage some of the just discourse that has happened here within the last month and a half. Like that, to me, could be something that at least Mavs fans could hope on. I was like, all right, well, we went through all this crap, but at least we have a chance at, you know, Ace Bailey or Cooper Flag or something like that. And I'll see if Jason Kidd and company have the chops and essence to do that, because I don't think this is not where the Mavs expected to be. We all know that, but life comes at you fast. And now what are you going to do with the information that you have?
Look, I hear where you're coming from, Shaw. I just don't buy into that crap. I think just the idea of just going out there and losing, I think is it not to go and lose, but let's just say if they win any more games, we're saying that it's not going to help them. And where I beg to differ is that is why you have 15 men on a roster. Okay. I don't know how you expect to even only win with just the 5 or 6 guys you've got. You clearly have seen that if you don't have a complete basketball team, you're not winning. Point blank, period. You ask the Dallas Mavericks, ask the Denver Nuggets, right? And if you're lucky and you keep the guys that got you where you weren't expected to get to the year previously, you should be actually better. And then with some of the guys that you draft or you bring in through the G League, wherever you're getting your players, they should be inspired to go out there and play above their minds in order to put you in a better position or a better spot. I said all of that to say this, Shaw. while I appreciate the greatest of intentions of what Michael Thompson said, I also feel like it's a slap in the face to all of those other players out there that are going through what apparently he's protecting his son. I'm not dissing Michael Thompson. What I'm saying is sometimes some things, how they're said and the way that they're being said, while they're only great, like they're good for their intentions for what that's supposed to say, it also could do damage. Because I could just make the same equal argument. Nothing about Klay Thompson's season this year has benefited neither him nor the Dallas Mavericks, right? Like, if anything, he is so dependent on those other two guys that make him look great that why didn't you just basically, for the lesser money, stay with the Golden State Warriors, right? Like, I'm just saying that sometimes the way that you comment those things can actually prove to be an indirect level of disrespect. And you look at guys like Najee Marshall right now and Williams and those guys who are going through it just like Klay, and in many regards are outperforming what we're getting from Klay Thompson. So that's the reason why I'm just like, damn, if I'm Jason Kidd and I got to put guys out there that I know is going to go out there and compete. I'm not saying Klay isn't competing, but he clearly is going to be he's going to put us at a disadvantage, leaving him out there, and he can't defend anyone. There's no matchup that's really making him favorable and stuff. I'm just like, man, it would just go all wrong. I just found it interesting that I get why Michael Thompson was doing what he's doing, but I also felt like, damn, man, guys like Marshall, who was not even getting minutes at the beginning of this season, now they have to depend on him, and he's going out there and he's actually putting up good numbers. He's actually a great contributor. Like, I would hate to see that those guys are working their ass off just for the idea that they should really be losing. They're not good. They're not good enough team. They got to get those guys to perform.
It might happen regardless, right? So I think where what you're saying, where it can marry what I'm saying, is like it doesn't mean that they stop developing the guys that they have. I don't think these guys are good enough to compete for a playoff, spot. Really, I mean, well, not a playoff spot, but again, and if they were to sneak in based on what they've already done this season, and then they're just going to get bounced in the first round anyway. So is it worth that level of pressure, that level of exposure versus, hey, these last 15 games, we really get an extended run on them, then they get into the playoffs and lose anyway? I think you can debate the merits of that, but I think either way, they're going to be in a development phase for whoever is available to play currently.
I would say, Shaw, to what that point of what you're saying is, if your intent is you're trying to rush these guys back from their injuries, you're trying to rush Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington and Kyrie Irving, and these guys back from their injuries. Like Kyrie, obviously not, because it's a torn ACL. But I'm saying you're trying to rush these guys because you need them for the playoffs. No, like if these guys have had a storied past of injuries that have piled up on them and stuff like that, no, I'm not advocating that you rush these guys back in there for the sake of them getting bounced. But I do think, though, that the guys that you have out there, this is on Jason Kidd to get as much as you can out of these guys, because guess what? Unless they're on one-year deals, they're going to be on your roster. You're going to have to figure out a way to get them to help contribute somehow, some way. And by doing it in the midst of telling people, I'm not saying you, but they should go out there and they should basically be tanking and losing and stuff like that. I just think it's counterintuitive, because it's basically saying no matter after your first 5 guys or after your first 6 guys, everybody else can just be replaceable. And again, name me where in the last 5, 6, 7 years that has constituted a team who's fresh off of getting to the NBA Finals has been able to repeat that same task without having the bulk majority of your roster from the previous year a part of that roster for the current year in order for you to make that actual run.
I mean, I get it, right? I do. And so Dallas has some decisions to make here in the short term. I ultimately think I'm going to stand on, like I said, it may not really matter. I agree with Michael Thompson's statement, is like they're just not going to be good enough with whoever is there. I mean, they signed Moses Brown and then he promptly got hurt. So it was just like
cursed. It's not even there. It's cursed.
It's just it's a wild situation. So I think even guys who are both long-term fits and short-term ones, they'll take looks at them and see what they'll be able to do. But I don't think this is going to be a competitive basketball team where it's really going to matter in terms of the playoffs, and they may intentionally or unintentionally end up tanking for the remainder part of the season.
It's going to hurt when we have to put the Mavs on the slab, bro.
Well, they're coming up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Shaw. Finally, the Knicks nicked up. Jalen Brunson suffers a ankle sprain, so he's out for a few weeks. If you're the New York Knicks, right? How do you approach where you need to be in order for when Jalen Brunson is ready to return or set to return, that you're going to be able to be competitive enough for the run that you're going to make?
Well, the real answer is it's not going to happen because Tibbs is just going to, all right, well, I have to play one more guy now too. But really, those minutes should be split up and you're diving into more aspects of what that Knicks bench and roster is. You talk about the Mavs being banged up and being forced to. Tibbs is not going to be forced in anything. If he'd go out there and play himself, I guess, before he plays some of those guys on his 13th or 14th man. Like he's just really rooted in kind of that methodology. So sure, a guy like Deuce McBride may get some more minutes. Hart will probably do some more play creation here now and handle the ball on a more regular basis.
In the beginning of the year, Deuce McBride was getting a lot of a lot of press time.
Though. He still gets run.
But is it just me, or has it just kind of dissipated? Like, I would have figured at some point now we have this rhythm of talking about Deuce McBride being, kind of like the Emmanuel Quickly for that team. And, when there was numerous injuries, even when they didn't have Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickly had always stepped in and had always been a spark plug, had always been, that kind of guy to really kind of help, elevate the Knicks in certain points. I mean, clearly he's not something that he's shown you he can do it through the course of a regular season, but I'm just a little surprised that Deuce McBride is not, he's not elevated himself to a level where it's something that we're talking about a little bit more constantly. It's like,
I mean, I would disagree. I mean, he's getting 24 minutes a night, so and I think that's going to probably go.
But it's not the minutes, though, Shaw. I guess it's not so much the minutes. I'm talking about just, I guess, the impact player that he is. It just seems it's muted. In other words, like, I don't know.
I mean, well, I think there's an opportunity now for that to shine because they're clearly going to need offense, right? You can have Hart handle as much as you want. You can even have Campaign and give him some more minutes. God bless. But I think where the points are going to come from are guys like Deuce McBride, specifically, and it also opens up an opportunity for Bridges, who's been, for lack of a better phrase, he's averaging 17 a game, but like you talk about something not feeling impactful. It really does feel like he's been kind of going through the motions out there a lot of times, especially offensively.
Empty calories.
Yeah, it's just, it hasn't been great. And then the defense hasn't been, I think, what the Knicks would have expected. So OG, I think, has been 100 times more impactful than Bridges has been, even though Bridges averages more points per game than OG does. But anyway, McBride will have an opportunity. Campaign will have an opportunity. And hopefully Jalen Brunson is back on the court soon. Ironically, before we transition, Brunson's injury happens in the Laker game, in an overtime game that, either way, one of those teams should have won probably in regulation, and it just didn't go that way. Just injuries happen when they happen. And then, LeBron now is also going to be out 1 to 2 weeks with a groin injury, on the Lakers side too, who we talked a little bit about in the beginning session too. So hopefully both of these major stars can return to form quickly, as both their teams need them here heading into the playoffs.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we got a quick little who you got. Can't wait for this one, man. We're taking our man Killer Cade, Tyrese Haliburton. Oh, this is a good one. You do not want to miss out here on The Baseline. We're back. Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time for a little who you got. Shout outs to our man Drez, Black Sheep. You can get with this, you can get with that. So we can get with this. Our man Cade Cunningham, right? Cornerstone player, building block player now for the Detroit Pistons. We can get with that. Tyrese Haliburton, who the Sacramento Kings had. Probably wish they still had him. Sacramento Kings had him, right? Moved him over to Indiana. He's essentially a building block player for those Indiana Pacers. Have at it, my man Shaw. Who you got?
Yeah, so the conversation is one of those where you try to pick one, but not, just completely diss the other. It's like, hey, I'd be happy with either one of these guys, on my roster, being one of my lead guys. I feel like, and Cade is he came in a year after Haliburton. I feel like trying not to be a prisoner of the moment in terms of how great Cade's season has been and where he's led this Pistons team from the underbellies, if you will, of the lottery into now what should be almost a secure spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. But I like Cade's size. I like his ability to score a little bit more with a little bit more uh, versatility offensively. Whereas I think Tyrese is not necessarily limited, but I just like, again, the size that Cade has is going to allow him to be able to do some more stuff, including posting up other and smaller guards. Haliburton's going to shoot the three probably at a higher clip traditionally, although Cade is shooting it really, really, really well this season. But and I think Haliburton still has the vision on him in terms of, of diming other guys. And I'll even give Tyrese a slight edge in terms of what his leadership qualities are right now. But I think if you're paying attention this year, and even how veteran guys are rallying around Cade and saying, hey, he's our guy. We need to get him the ball. We need to have him lead us. We're starting to see those things really, truly develop. And what he's doing from, not only leadership standpoint, but also obviously the statistical standpoint, those intangibles are starting to skew more towards Cade. So last year, this conversation is probably open and shut for most people because Haliburton was taking the world by storm. And I think Haliburton is becoming a little bit of an afterthought here this year, although the Pacers are, right there in the thick of things in the Eastern Conference. But for my money, where I am right now here today, I do like Cade Cunningham slightly better, and I'd pick him over Tyrese Haliburton simply because of the size. And I think the versatility that he'll be able to give us offensively with comparable stats, assist-wise. He's a better rebounder than Tyrese is currently at this stage as well, too. And I think those leadership qualities, as alluded to, are magnifying and coming into full view. And like I said, we may get this as a first round matchup. So it would really be amazing to kind of see if these two guys go against each other and who would come out victorious. Who you got?
Up until I was pretty certain I was going to stick with Tyrese Haliburton. You know me, Shaw. I've been a Tyrese Haliburton fan since the draft. I've said that he was one of the most slept on players that the New York Knicks should have had. And I said that, he would have been a perfect fit for what the New York Knicks needed at that time frame as the point guard position. I will give you the nod on everything that Cade Cunningham has exhibited so far in his early career, that I don't know if whether or not Tyrese Haliburton has had the opportunity to be able to exhibit those same type of qualities at a high level. I think we saw glimpses of it in Sacramento, and then suddenly part of that narrative shifted when he went to the Indiana Pacers. And then now he's catapulted himself where he has become this explosive scorer because he is capable of, of exploding. Whereas Cade Cunningham, in a way, reminds me a little bit like SGA. He subtly gives you 40 points. You know what I'm saying? He's not his explosive game doesn't resonate the same way as a person like Tyrese Haliburton. Maybe it's the demeanor, maybe it's his style of play. But I will say that Cade Cunningham, and I'm a person of, when it comes to the game of basketball and you're at that level, brutal efficiency to me speaks and resonates loudly. And I think that's why I've become a fan of SGA, is because the way he goes about scoring that basketball is with brutal efficiency, right? He is true to his ability to shoot the mid-range and kill you to death with it. And then he'll sprinkle in shooting the three, but he does not have to be dependent on the three. Whereas with Tyrese Haliburton, it's interesting because I thought that a lot of it was more about his size and the fact that he could take advantage of smaller guards. He doesn't really do that. And his explosion last year was because of his ability to just basically shoot the lights out from the three. Like he was taking ridiculous 3-point shots, like from anywhere. And it was just like, oh my God, like, this guy, like he suddenly has become this effective 3-point shooter and stuff. And I feel like now that part of it has kind of gone away. I think that they have defended him a little bit better, and he had gotten off to a slow start. And so now you're beginning to see a little bit of the chink in the armor. Like, is there a lot of versatility to his game if it's not the way that he dictates? Whereas Cade Cunningham has been an amoeba, bro. Like he mixes and matches and finds his way to get the points necessary while also leading his team to those victories and stuff. So I'm going to lean on this in the sense that I see more versatility in a Cade Cunningham. Who knows? If I was talking about a more explosive player right now, I would definitely still give it to Tyrese Haliburton. But I think for the all-around game, I lean more to Cade Cunningham because you're seeing all of that, and you're seeing how all those other things outside of assists, to your point, rebounding the basketball, the defensive 50-50 play balls. There are just certain other things that he's doing from a statistical standpoint that makes his game resonate a lot more than what I'm seeing from Tyrese Haliburton. And I'm not saying that to say that Tyrese is not capable. I'm saying that, like, clearly what he's doing in Indiana has afforded him the ability to not do it with the level of consistency that I think is needed for them to be as good as they were supposed to be. And you can clearly see that that part is because there are still weaknesses to Tyrese's game that we still need to see evolve as he continues to become that lead guard for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I think where Tyrese still, no, I don't think I know where Tyrese still has Cade is in still the overall decision making. They have slightly similar, well, not quite slightly similar usages. Like Cade has more usage than Tyrese does because he's just asked to do more. He truly is like the offensive hub for the Pistons in a way that Haliburton is just not burdened with, I think, at this time, because Siakam's a little bit more well established and so forth and so forth. So Cade averaging like 4.5 turnovers is pretty absurd, right? Like that can't stay. And that's why I said earlier, I think Haliburton has the decision making and ahead of him right now. But that's not to say that won't change and can't change and won't change here in the upcoming season. So again, without being a prisoner of the moment, Cade is having a more impactful season, even statistically speaking, turnovers aside, than Tyrese is. But the Hugh got premise is really like, wait, no, who would you rather have like moving forward? And that's where I think, because of Cade's versatility offensively, and then you would at least think that he could apply some of that, because he is trying defensively under JB Bickerstaff here now as well too, that could be something where he could really be a perennial all-star and an all NBA guy. And Haliburton is going to be right there, nudging alongside him for some of those things. But I'm more skeptical about Haliburton's long-term prospects as a defender and his long-term prospects, to be able to really, really score at different levels. He's got the three. He can shoot the floater. He can obviously get in and drive and get passed by some guys. And maybe some of the herky-jerkiness and maybe some of the awkwardness of even the release, the aesthetics of Haliburton's game, maybe that detracts for me some, but that's not a real situation, right? Like that's just a preference, right? But I think Haliburton is still very much on track to be right there behind Cade, but I would just take Cade long term because of all the reasons I outlined, especially with the size and the versatility offensively.
One thing that I will say, Shaw, and again, I lean to this because when I look at Tyrese Haliburton, he really should have an advantage over other guards because of his length and size, but he does not play below the rim. He doesn't. Now maybe that's just because of scheme. Maybe that's because of the fact that he has Pascal Siakam. But I think that lends to the point that I was making earlier about his struggles this year has been masked by the explosiveness of Pascal Siakam and his offensive presence. It's kind of given Tyrese Haliburton a little bit of cover. Had we seen the same numbers replicated from what he was doing last year now, we still would not be we would not be highlighting where if he was struggling as he's been struggling shooting the basketball beyond the arc and everything like that, somebody would be like, yo, get your ass down in the block and start taking advantage of some of these smaller guards. He just refuses to do that. And I never worry about that with a guy like Cade Cunningham. His game was built like that when he came out of, is it Oklahoma State, I believe? He had that game even when he was in college. And so like that to me shows me when he doesn't have his jumper, working for him, he'll go down there and he'll find advantages in other ways. To your point, Haliburton's headiness as a guard and his ability to facilitate and get guys like Siakam off, Turner off, Nate Nesmith off, Nembhard and those guys off. That to me is what resonates with me in the type of, leadership qualities that Tyrese Haliburton can exhibit. But the all-around package, to your point, Shaw, I lean a little bit more because it's not like Cade doesn't have that. He just doesn't have those kind of players on his roster.
Right.
So he has to.
I mean, and I think you can the argument could be made, right? Because if I was going back to what I was just saying in terms of usage, it's more significant than I was even going off of my brain, right? So Cade's usage is like 30-something%, 32%. Haliburton's only at 21.5, right? So if you flip-flop those, right, Haliburton, is he a 25 point per game guy? Probably, with that level of usage. And he's probably a 13 or 14 assist guy, with that same level of usage. Their teams are set up differently currently. But I still think that I would choose Cade over Tyrese long term. And again, that's not to downgrade Tyrese in any capacity, because I think he's a great player and has a great future. But yeah, I think we've seen Tyrese on the big stage. And he's done some things, right? Even from last year in the NBA Cup, and then getting all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and giving the Celtics all they could handle. Yes, it was a sweep, but it was a competitive one, to say the least. And then he even went out in that series. But what he did in the Knicks in the Garden, to close out that, so I'm anxious to see where Cade, and maybe it's a more fair conversation after we see Cade in the playoffs to kind of figure out what that will look like. And so maybe it's premature, but I think for where we are right now, I'm pretty comfortable in my selection of Cade Cunningham.
All right. Well, there you go. It's a sweep. You know what I'm saying? Killer Cade being taken. But it's a sweep, but it's very narrow. Very narrow. I don't think we'd be completely disappointed. Let's put it like this. If Cade Cunningham came on 10 years later, I think we would be putting Tyrese Haliburton up against a lot of other guys, and we'd probably be taking Tyrese Haliburton more so than we have someone like Cade. You see, but that's why we have you, Shaw, because you got to make those tough decisions and put those guys in that box for us to make that selection, my friend.
Listen, I'll triple, quadruple down on this. If we can get those two teams to somehow meet in the playoffs, that would be the thing, right? Where we could really see those two great guards going up against each other. So it's a very real possibility now. They are separated, I think, by a half game or so between 4, 5, and 6. So right now, today, it's Bucks versus Pacers. But again, that is basically a half game difference. So let's see.
And the more words of Black Sheep, and you can get a scoop later. Awesome show this week, Shaw. A lot of stuff we covered, man. But, man, some good discussions to be had. Good fodder for the earlobes and stuff like that, man. And this is why we like this stretch of NBA being happening, man, because it's not just what's going on the court, brother. It's also what's happening off the court as well too.
Absolutely. So kudos to you for taking the lead here to help us get through the latter part of this NBA season in terms of the content that we're going to cover. I've been loving, the vibe that we've been having, the vibe that we always have too. But, you've been doing an amazing job, I think, as a lead content creator here for the Baseline here the last couple of weeks. So I want to give you your flowers in that space. But yes, the NBA continues to give what it gives. And we will be here throughout the course. Special guests coming up for the latter part of the season, I'm sure. New collaborations. We do what we do here on the Baseline through 19 Media Group, man. Just excited to be here with you and hear what our fans have to what our listeners have to say. So let us know what you think about, the who you got, Cade Cunningham versus Tyrese Haliburton, thoughts on Jalen Brunson, thoughts on LeBron being out as well, too, thoughts on the MVP race, Joker, SGA. It's all bubbling, it's all popping.
Oh, and the Jayson Tatum, you were bringing fire, my friend. You know what I'm saying?
I do appreciate that. Yeah. Give us your thoughts too. Are you tired of the JT slander, or are you in the JT slander, boat? Like, where you want to say, he deserves all this hate that he's getting. If you are, you could probably pretty much unfollow me. But at the end of the day, we'd love to have a conversation about it.
Hey, listen, I'm all for having Hal Jordan on our podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm saying, my man Green Lantern people about now, loving it.
They're filming that movie right now. Can't wait for that one.
All right, man. Hey, as always, man, thank you for listening in. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do. And we'll catch up with you next time.